from the studios of Clean Fuels Alliance America, this is the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast. Authentic conversations with leaders in the biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel industries. Now, here's your host, Scott Tremaine.
And welcome. This week, Kerry Fogarty, Quality Control Manager at Incobrasa Industries, joins Clean Fuels CEO Donnell Rehagen to describe how biodiesel played a pivotal role in transforming the company's vision and solidifying its role in the circular bioeconomy.
Well, hey, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. And Kerry, it's wonderful
Donnell,
to have you here in our studio in Jefferson City. Welcome.
Hey, I appreciate the offer to be here. This is a fantastic facility. It's great being in person with you to be able to do this. You guys have really got a great spot to do this down here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, we've been excited about it, and great to have you. I've been, as you know, clamoring to get you into our podcast studio. In fact, I've only had my feelings hurt a couple of times because you've told me no, and here I am. I finally talked you into it. So
I don't know if clamor is the right word, but persistent maybe.
No, I think Incobrasa just has such an intriguing story in our industry, and I've known you guys from not the inception of Incobrasa. You guys were doing soybean crush before we were doing biodiesel, but around that same time, and so I've kind of watched this evolution of Incobrasa, and it's something that I wanted to talk about. But first, if you don't mind, I'd like to make sure our listeners know Kerry Fogarty. So you want to tell us a little bit, introduce yourself to our listeners, a little bit about your background. How did you end up doing what you're doing there in Gilman, Illinois?
Yeah, so I started in the soybean industry after going to college at Illinois State University. I obtained a chemistry degree from ISU. And I jumped in the soybean industry through Central Soya, a small crushing plant, pretty close to where I live now and pretty close to the current plant where I work at. And I worked there for about 4 years, and I heard about somebody maybe from Brazil was thinking about putting a new crush facility someplace, I don't know, in Gilman, a small town called Gilman, which I'd never heard of at the time either. I thought, you know what, I'm going to look into this and see if there's something I can get in on the ground floor. If it's a new plant, maybe I could, rise up through the ranks and watch it grow. So I took a chance on it. I went over and I interviewed for the lab manager position. And I was first kind of shocked. They offered me the job of a laboratory technician, which I was already doing that. I really wasn't interested in that. But make a long story short, that the person that originally took the lab manager job didn't want to stay there any longer. So they called me back, and I became the lab manager. This was before the plant actually became operational. So I started in the summer of 97 before the plant became operational. The plant was built, but we didn't actually crush any soybeans until it was actually over Labor Day weekend of 1997 is when we started crushing soybeans. So I was part of that operation to get the plant going. So it was an exciting time, that's for sure.
Well, to see where Incobrasa is today, I'm sure you're not only proud, but probably a little bit amazed as well. I've been to your facility a couple of times now, most recently to take part in your announcement about your expansion that's going to happen there. But let's back up. So the soy crush plant came online. How long after that, and what happened next? Because I know there's been this huge evolution of Incobrasa into multiple products made from soy.
It has, and this is our story is a perfect one to tell in a situation like this, because we operated the plant from 97 to 99, and we shut the plant down. The plant wasn't making any money because soybean oil was 12 cents a pound. So the decision was made to stop operation at the plant. They laid off most of the workforce. They were going to keep about 12 or 14 people on staff. I was going to be one of those, but I found another job. I didn't want to stick around that long to see when the plant, if or when it was going to start back up. So we've had our ups and downs. So the plant restarted in 2001, and at that time, started construction of a soybean oil refinery. Up to that point, we just made crude soybean oil and sold it to other refiners, and we sold the soybean meal as well. But in 2001, the decision was made to make a refinery to take it to food grade vegetable oil at that point. So that became operational in 2001, and the owner wanted me to learn how to run a refinery, so he sent me to Brazil to be able to learn how to do that. So that was kind of an exciting trip for me. But in 2001, I remember talking to the owner. He said, I made one mistake. He said, I should have started building the refinery right after the crushing facility became operational. He said, I'm not going to make that same mistake twice. So as soon as the refinery was operational, he decided to add the packaging plant so we could take the soybeans in, we could take resin beads in to make plastic bottles and put all that together, and out the end would come bottled vegetable oil ready for the store shelf.
Wow, amazing. And when you think about it, otherwise your option was you could crush the beans, you sell the meal, you sell the oil, whatever that market. So now you're able to create a value added for the oil with the finished refined oil for cooking, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because without being able to package it, we were limited to who would be able to receive that finished vegetable oil. Fortunately for us, we did have a couple customers not very far away that were able to do that, but they were adding the value to it by putting it in packages. And the owner saw that, and he said, we need to do that here. So that's why we put that line together. So
that was one of the amazing things when I made the first tour of your facility, probably going on 10 years ago, is to see the bottling plant. Because I remember looking in this bucket and saying, what are those? And you're like, well, those are going to end up being the bottles as soon as they go through the line. And then, of course, the veg oil going in. So you're now able to sell vegetable oil into the crude market. You're able to sell the refined oil into the food market. So what happened next?
Well, even with the bottling plant fully operational, we still had excess soybean oil that we needed something to do with. And somebody came and proposed to the plant. They brought this crazy idea of biodiesel might be something you can do with your excess vegetable oil. And we had a couple conversations, and the CEO owner of the company said, we're going to make biodiesel. That's one nice thing about working for a small company like this. You don't have to go through a board meeting. You don't have to go through engineering. It's one guy, and he says, yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to start tomorrow. So
well, that's also the bad sides, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Then you get a homework assignment overnight.
Yeah, exactly. When you think you're going to be able to take it easy for a while, no, all of a sudden now we need an EPA permit for this biodiesel plant that we're going to start building. So we started the process in the summer of 2006 to actually prior to that, it must have been. With the development, the engineering part of it. But we couldn't do anything physically until we had the EPA permit. And we didn't get that until the end of July of 2006. August 2nd, we stuck a shovel in the ground and started building the biodiesel plant. And before the end of the year, we were able to produce biodiesel out of that plant. So it came along very quickly, another advantage to working for a small company and where decisions could get made very quickly.
So how big was your original plant?
The nameplate was 30 million gallons on it. And we operated close to that in the beginning. And then, of course, in 2000, I forget the years, 2010, when the tax credit went away, and 2013, it fell to the wayside again. So we struggled for a few years in there. But since we've had a little bit more smooth sailing, we ramped up the production to 42 million gallons was the next step. Then we went up to 60 million gallons, and our current one is 75 million gallons, but we have a permit application in to run that up to about 85 million gallons.
So a couple of plant expansions of your biodiesel facility since it originally opened.
Yep. Not a lot of equipment changes. From the original 30, we were able to ramp it up to 45 just by tweaking what we had in there. We didn't have to add equipment. But when we made that jump up to 60, we actually had to add new equipment, expanded the building a little bit. So that was a bit more of a major expansion. So every time we go get one of these EPA permits, I ask them, is this going to go this fast, or is it really going to run 5 million gallons more per year? So it's always tricky, because if we end up finding another gear in the plant somewhere, we have to go back and redo the EPA permit.
So you've got now lots of gallons of biodiesel production. You're still producing veg oil for consumption,
We are.
human consumption, and still able to sell soybean oil into the market if the conditions are such that say that that's a good idea.
That's a pretty limited amount going out in bulk right now. There's not a lot of that going out in bulk. It either goes out as biodiesel or it goes out in PET bottles from the plant.
So I mentioned earlier having been to your place twice, and the last time was just last fall, and I was there as part of an expansion, a big party celebration of sorts. The governor of Illinois and a bunch of dignitaries were there to try to help Incobrasa kick off this big, pretty major expansion. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in the plans there and what's underway?
Well, the current crush facility will crush about 40 million bushels per year. The plan is to add a bit much larger facility right to the west of where the current plant is, and it will be 80 to 90 million bushel plant per year. So we're going to more than double our crush capacity. We will mothball the existing crush plant when the new one comes online. We won't run those concurrently. But that is expected to partially come online in 2026, and then over the next couple of years, we will ramp that up to the full 80 to 90 million bushel capacity. This has been possible. There are a lot of soybeans that are available in the area that we haven't been taking advantage of. A lot of it goes down the river, gets sold overseas. So the beans are there, and we're just going to cull a few more of those and bring them to Gilman and crush them right there, as opposed to sending them overseas.
And that's a great thing, for the farmers of the area. And I was thinking about that when you were talking. I'm like, here we go, right? Illinois is the top producer of soybeans in the country. At least that's what the farmers in Illinois tell me all the time, by the way. And so there you are, providing this great outlet for them to have local access to crush with, kind of these value added opportunities for the veg oil side of the soybean. That's a wonderful thing.
It is. So they've always had a market for the soybeans, because they've obviously been going somewhere. They've been going overseas, but that market can be fickle, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the next administration. So to have a local crush facility that can take all those beans that are in that swath right through there, that's a great advantage for the farmers. And because there's not as much, the transportation costs are much less to get them to our plant as opposed to shipping them overseas. More of that money of the bean goes into the farmer's pocket in the end. So,
I mean, great for the U.S. and great for agriculture. And I don't know, I'm assuming that part of the rationale and the financial logic behind expanding soybean crush, because like you said, the beans were already there. It's just a matter of whether they're going to be crushed there at your plant or whether they're going to, hit a vessel and end up in, China or somewhere else. I assume a lot of that decision-making was wrapped around the growth in our industry on the renewable fuel side.
We wouldn't be around since about 2005 had it not been for biodiesel. I really don't think so. I don't know if the crushing plant would be there anymore. So it has everything to do with the biofuels industry. So we're very proud to be a part of that, and we're at the same time we're taking advantage of it as well. So we can crush more soybeans, provide more oil to the market, and provide more soybean meal to the market as well while we're doing that. So.
Well, with this advent and big strong push for decarbonization and cleaner fuels, I mean, as an industry, we're sort of finally getting into that recognition of what we can bring. And it's not just more energy from an energy security standpoint. That's important. It's not just the economics of jobs and money being, spent in rural economies. It's not just that. Now the third E, as we like to refer to it, the environmental, is really being recognized. as a big benefit in using the fuels that we're producing. And soybean farmers should be extremely, extremely proud of the role that they're playing, in companies like you as well, to be able to offer those cleaner fuels to fleets and companies that are really working hard to try to decarbonize.
That's a good point. And hopefully podcasts like this get back to the farmers, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between the average American farmer and what ends up with their crops. I don't know if they know what becomes of the products that come out of the soybeans that they produce. I think it's a good message to the farmers to let them know where this is going. This does come back into your fields and back to your farms as biodiesel, because I know that the farmers burn biodiesel as well on the field. So yeah, it's a full circle, and I think we need to make sure that message is spread to all the farmers and a lot of other parties that are interested in it.
This is the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast. Fascinating ideas and conversations in the world of biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel.
Well, I'm Donnell Rehagen, and I'm speaking today with Kerry Fogarty.
Hey, Donnell.
We've been speaking a lot about Incobrasa. You mentioned the roots of Incobrasa started in Brazil. Can you take us back a little bit? How did that happen to land then in the little bitty town of Gilman, Illinois?
So Incobrasa is owned by a Brazilian, was owned by a Brazilian gentleman that he had 4 plants operational in Brazil at one point in time. And I do know from a few stories I had heard that the infrastructure in Brazil was such that sometimes his plants would be down. They couldn't get beans to the plant to process. They couldn't ship out the meal. So he thought, maybe there's a better place to do this. In 1982, he started investing in farm ground in Illinois and bought up some acreage for that, which turned out to be really independent of the actual crush plant. In about 1995, he decided to look for a site to put a soybean crushing facility, and it happened to be in Illinois. It's on a great location. There's a couple railroads that service that intersection right there. Interstate 57 runs right by that, and U.S. Route 24. So we have good infrastructure. There was plenty of gas in the area as well, which is important for a soybean crushing plant. So in 95, it was decided to plop a new soybean crushing plant out in the middle of soybean field in central Illinois. So
how does one go about building a plant like that? I mean, is this you're hiring somebody to just come in and do that, or how did Incobrasa go about that? Because we're seeing a lot of expansions. We talked about yours earlier. There's a number of expansions and new crush plants coming up around the country as we speak. So help our listeners understand a little bit about what it takes to really do something like that.
So some of the major portions of it, like the extraction process itself, you can go out and you can find a pre-made engineered extraction plant, if you will, that will have all the vessels, the pumps that you need for that. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up going out and finding the best extraction process, and then we would go out and find the best preparation process. That's the what you do to the beans before they actually go into the soybean extractor. And then once you have the pieces put together, then we hired local engineers to design the buildings, the infrastructure that you need for that, for the conduits, that type of thing. So all that gets designed by engineers, and then you hire companies to come and put it in the ground, set it up for you. So we've done that on multiple occasions, both with the crushing plant. When we first built the biodiesel plant, Brazil had actually been doing biodiesel quite a bit longer than the U.S. had been doing in 2005 and 6 when we started looking at that. So we borrowed some technology from an engineering firm from Brazil that came up and gave us some tips on how to put a biodiesel plant together. But again, once we had the drawings and the general design, we went out and we sourced tanks, pumps from different vendors throughout the United States, and again had design engineers design the building that would fit around this equipment that we had bought. So
quite an undertaking, I guess, is what I'm drawing from all of that. These aren't things that just happen quickly and don't happen easily either.
They're not. It takes a lot of people that are very dedicated to it, and a lot of very smart people that make these things come to fruition.
We talked earlier about your expansion. You all kind of announced it and had it a little bit underway whenever I was there last fall. How long is it going to take? You talked about, you said a 90 million bushel a year-ish crush plant, so crush expansion. So how long does it take from start to finish if everything goes the way you want it to?
Well, we started putting ground infrastructure there last spring, I'm going to say. So spring of 2023. Started working ground, putting drainage tiles, that type of stuff in the groundwork. And at the same time, we were purchasing long-term pieces of equipment like the extraction plant, the extractor itself. There's long lead times for those types of things. So those things were placed on order.
So those aren't just sitting on a shelf somewhere waiting for somebody to walk in.
You cannot find those on Amazon.com. So. And it shows up 10 minutes after you order it. No, they don't have those. So we placed orders for the long-term pieces of equipment, and in the meantime started putting up silos. So that was in 23. We're hopeful to start crushing, at least playing around with it, the fall of 25 or late of 25. We should start messing around with it a little bit, but we'll see.
So, Kerry, one of the interesting things, when I was there for your plant celebration there on the expansion, was there was conversation about solar.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about what that's all about.
The solar field. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where this idea came from, but we have, in building the new plant, we are going to have a racetrack, for lack of a better word, for the train to go around, the train cars to accommodate a bunch of train cars. Well, in the middle of that, there's 150 acres of just open space. Somebody had the idea, let's throw in a solar array in that to help generate power to run the plant. So we are in the process of doing that as well. When that decision was made to throw in that solar field, I don't think that it was well known that will have a long-term bearing on our carbon intensity score for the biodiesel production. So it's serendipitous that we happen to decide to put in a solar array when it's going to help us in the long run, probably for our CI score for biodiesel production.
So you talked about 150 acres. So is that going to happen all at one time, or?
It's not. This is our first foray into solar power. So we're dipping our toe in the water with a 50-acre field. Wow. If that doesn't turn out to be a huge headache, we have the room to do that 2 or 3 more times to add it to. So it'll end up being 150, maybe 200 acres of solar array. So it should generate not a huge amount of electricity. I mean, it won't by any means, certainly initially, it won't cover all the electrical usage of the plant, but it will certainly offset a good portion of it. So
yeah, and as you mentioned, it's a very strategic decision, even if it wasn't intentional. To be able to help lower the CI score. That's kind of where a lot of things are going. Obviously, in our industry, is what can plants do, what can feedstocks do to provide lower CI finished fuels, and what happens at the plants make a difference.
Yep. I'm sure initially it was an economic decision. If we can, offset some of our electrical costs by building a solar array, well, let's do that. And then, then it so happens it's going to help for our CI score as well. So win-win for us.
Well, good for you guys. I mean, it's exciting, like I said, not just for the soybean industry, but it's extremely exciting for our industry as well. When we at Clean Fuels launched our vision for our industry, this would be back in 2020, that we were going to be a 6 billion gallon a year industry by 2030. So in 10 years, we said we're going to grow to 6 billion. Wow. When we said that, we were just a little over 2.5 maybe. So we're going to a little more than double in a decade what it took us the first 25 years to get to. We recognized that, for us to be able to get to 6 billion, we really needed the soybean crush industry to see what we saw, because the feedstocks really were going to be a challenge if there wasn't going to be a build out somewhere in the world, hopefully here, right, of soybean crush, because all the other feedstocks, there's just limitations on used cooking oil and animal fats and distillers corn oil. So we really need these oil seeds to step into that space. So we're extremely excited to see, not just Incobrasa, but a number of other soy crushers seeing what we saw and making the decision to invest. And we don't take that lightly, because that's a significant amount of investment. I think your expansion, I want to say, was $2 $250 million or something like that.
We hope. Yeah.
So my point is it's a major commitment, and it's not without risk that these companies are doing this. And again, it's because, they share the vision we have and see for the industry and the value that's been created for soybean oil that maybe wasn't there 15, 20, 30 years ago. They see that and they're like, hey, we can be a part of that.
Exactly. You bring up a good point, and the soybean crushing industry works very closely with clean fuels, obviously. So that message was made loud and clear to us, and the crushing industry heeded that word, and we're going to expand crush by about 30% within the next 5 to 10 years. So the message was received, and the industry is responding to that. So it's a great partnership we have between Clean Fuels and National Oilseed Processors Association, NOPA. We can work together on a lot of these issues, and it's been a good partnership over the last decade that I've been involved with both organizations.
And it's a great evolution, and I think for soybeans, they've always been a wonderful product. All the way from the origins, when you start thinking about the protein and the meal and all that huge value source there, but to now have so much demand for the oil as well that, soybean farmers can not only hopefully forever profit off soybeans, but they can also be proud, of the products that they're making, out of that, because they're feeding animals, that are feeding people, they're putting products into the food chain, veg oils and other products like that. And now they're helping us to create some of the cleanest fuels on the planet.
Exactly. And in that process that you just described, one point that is oftentimes missed, I believe, is when we, like Incobrasa, crush more soybeans to make vegetable oil for clean fuels, we are also making that much more protein to be able to do that, which goes into the human food market. So essentially, when we crush more beans to make more soybean oil for clean fuels, we also make a contribution to the food chain itself. So
exactly, and that gets back to that food and fuel message that we're always trying to convey. That more soybean oil for our industry is good, because more soybeans means more protein, more meat production, and farmers here in the United States, it doesn't matter whether you're growing livestock or whether you're growing row crops. We're feeding a lot of the entire world.
Yep.
And so not only do we Americans depend on U.S. farmers to be successful every single day, every single year, people around the world need U.S. farmers to be successful every single day around the world. And so we're glad to be a part of adding that value to some component of that food production and creating that added value for the oil side that allows us, again, to create these clean fuels.
Exactly. Yep. That said, that will be somewhat of a challenge for this extra 30% of crush capacity that's coming online, because we have a market for the oil, but then we're also going to have to find a market for that added soybean meal that's going to have to go somewhere. So that's probably going to be a bit of a challenge for all these soybean crushers that are expanding or coming online. So we need to keep an eye on that, but we're working on methods to find markets for that as well. So.
Yeah, hopefully that ends up into more livestock production, here in the United States, because that's, again, a way to export food products all around the globe.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Kerry, it's been great having you here in the studio again, and great to have you here in Jefferson City. I also wanted to acknowledge, to appreciate you being a servant on our governing board. So that's been a recent development.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that.
You've joined our governing board, and I appreciate that as well. As a trade association, for us, if we're going to be successful for our members, we have to really, really understand what's going on in the industry. And we really depend on our governing board members, particularly, to be that conduit of information from the industry, helping us as a trade association see what's coming around the corner, what trends are developing in the marketplaces, what trends are developing, on the supply and demand side, so that we can, do whatever we can as a trade association. So, we have 15 members of our governing board, and so you're going to be one of those, and helping us to stay focused and to make sure that what we're working on a daily basis is things that's going to be beneficial to the industry. So I really appreciate your willingness to step up and do that.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to get started with that. So hopefully I can be an added advantage on that board. So.
I am positive you will, because like I said, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I mean, the Incobrasa story is really a very interesting and intriguing one. It's a little bit of a different business model from a lot of our other fuel producers. And so I think that's a value you can bring to that boardroom table and to us as the trade association. You all went through a number of inflection points and decision points. Should we do this or should we not? Should we add this market or should we add this product line to what we're doing? And those were all decisions that had to be made and be very thoughtful, right? Because there's a cost and there's a risk associated with all those. And we see the same thing, on behalf of the industry here at Clean Fuels on a regular basis. So we very much look forward to you joining our governing board and look forward to that. And again, Kerry, thank you for being here in our studio here in Jefferson City. And thank you for joining me on this podcast.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, Donnell.
All right. Thank you, guys. That's it for this week's episode. If you enjoy the show and you've got a moment and can give us a rating, we do appreciate it. It helps us grow and get higher up on the lists. And if you really want to go for it, yeah, you guessed it, you can leave us a review. We might just read it here. You can do that wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have any questions for our experts or suggestions for future topics or guests, you can email us at podcasts@cleanfuels.org. And thanks to everyone that's been doing that, because we are going to have our very first mailbag episode coming up in August, addressing your questions and your comments, and we appreciate each and every one of those. And join us next week for another episode of the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast.
Thanks for listening. Better, Cleaner, Now is a production of Clean Fuels Alliance America. Follow us at cleanfuels.org and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Clean Fuels Alliance America, visit us at cleanfuels.org.